Hi, I'm Hillel Neuer with UN Watch, and we're joined with Marina Nemat, an Iranian dissident, author, human rights activist, someone who was a victim of the Iranian regime a number of years ago. Marina, you've just come out recently from a session of Iran being reviewed on its human rights record in this chamber. What struck you? Did anything happen that was unexpected? What are your impressions coming out of this experience?
I don't think really anything was unexpected per se, but I think what always strikes me when I listen to Iranian officials speak abroad is that they lie in the most outrageous way that is almost unimaginable. So for an Iranian official to have the, I don't even know what to call it, the ability, I guess,
the audacity.
Yes, like it is something really dark and evil, basically. It is not something that, I'm sorry to say, that a decent human being can do. To be able to go up in front of the world and to know that, there are families of victims, that there are the victims, some of them who survived, actually happened to survive, who are sitting out there and who would be hearing this, to say, we do not even have political prisoners, that the people who are in prison, they have threatened our national security. Really? I mean, when I was in prison, 90% of us in the 80s, we were under the age of 20. How can 15-year-olds, and by thousands and thousands, who wanted education, who wanted to be allowed to wear whatever they wanted to wear? I mean, I did not want to wear the hijab. Kids, boys and girls who wanted to go out together, boys and girls who wanted to go and dance and have a beer and have fun, how could they possibly threaten anyone's national security is beyond. We are not talking about militants. We are not talking about terrorists. We are talking about teenagers. This was beyond me. How could you possibly go up in front of a international crowd and claim that Iran doesn't have any political prisoners or that they never tortured anybody? Because I'm standing here. So when Mr. Larijani goes up in front of the international community and says, we never tortured anybody, it's basically like saying I don't exist. That my whole existence and the existence of all of my friends who are buried in mass graves in Iran, and those who survived, and there are many of us out there, we don't even exist. So that was extremely disturbing.
One of the members of the delegation you mentioned, Mohammad Larijani, is the head of the Human Rights Department in Iran. There were a number of people in the delegation. One of them was a woman. She was all covered, but it was a woman. She was talking about women's rights. Does Iran have a strong record on protecting women's rights? Was she saying things that were accurate?
Honestly, at that point, I started laughing out loud, and people started looking at her. Because what she was saying was almost like a joke. So let's be very clear. I think what the Iranian delegation failed to do was to be very clear on what Iranian law, what is written in the books, actually dictates. According to Iranian law, which is based on Sharia law, officially, the testimony of a woman is worth half of a man. In my books, when my testimony is worth half of the testimony of a man, this is not justice, this is not freedom, and this is not equality, because half doesn't equal one. Half is half of one. So basically, according to Iranian law, a woman is worth half of a man. And I think that's just enough said on this topic. So she can say whatever she wants, but she cannot deny what is actually written in the Iranian books.
Now, you were there for 3 hours. Iran presented its report, and then all the countries that wanted to, maybe 100 or so countries, took the floor and were able to ask questions and make statements very briefly about Iran's record. I want to talk first about the countries that praised Iran. There were a lot of them. There was Bangladesh, Yemen, Syria. Many countries praised Iran.
North Korea.
And maybe others that aren't as dictatorial, Sri Lanka and others. What was your sense on hearing those words of praise and commending the effort to implement and make progress and recommend that they continue doing the right thing. What was your feelings hearing those kinds of statements?
I would really love, like, I consider this an invitation. I invite every single one of those individuals who sat down there in their comfortable chairs and had this conversation with Iran to come and sit with me at the same table. Look at me straight in the eye and tell me that Iran has a great human rights record. I would love it if they can actually look at me in the eye and they can say that. And I have a feeling that they are not going to be as courageous if they are actually faced with the victims, and not just me. If we can actually gather these victims, and if instead of addressing the assembly at the UN, if they could come and look at us in the face and say the exact same.
There were a number of countries, a minority, but a number of countries that took the floor and mentioned real problems in Iran. Any countries in particular stand out that you heard them and you said, wow, that country's standing up and saying true things and is using their time at the UN for what the UN was meant to be for?
You know what, there are actually a few of them. I think, again, my memory was 3 hours, so there was a lot of talking, but there was the UK. I think the UK was the first one that it was very precise, to address the main problems, and one of them was the mass executions. I mean, Iran has the highest number of executions per capita, and they addressed that. And the fact that juvenile offenders would be executed because of their crimes, and the fact that there is no religious freedom in Iran, and that there are members of the Baha'i community, of the Dervish community, of the Christian community in Iran. So there were the issue of women's rights. There was the UK was definitely great. Norway made a very good statement. Sweden was great. Canada was very well. Yes, I'm very proud of the Canadian government for standing up to that. Germany made some good statement. Denmark was really good. So I mean, there were definitely countries of the United States. They spoke well. So I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think as a survivor of this barbaric system that kills, tortures, and lies, thank you. Because in this case, I think really, I always say that silence is a weapon of mass destruction.
Anything else about that you want to share with us about your experience as someone who went through Evin prison and all the horrific experiences that you had? Sitting here for a 3-hour discussion on Iran's human rights record, where most of the time a presentation was given to Iran, speaking about all the wonderful things they're doing. Anything you want to add about your experience that you had to in that room right here?
There were moments there that I felt nausea like rising, and there were moments that I just wanted to run out, but I didn't have that much. Because my life belongs to those that the Islamic Republic of Iran has murdered and has wronged and continues to. So at least if it had ended, I could go home and be normal, get a dog, and live happily ever after. But it's not a possibility because it is ongoing. So that is a huge, huge problem. The fact that there are still people being imprisoned and murdered in Iran, it's big. So I think as somebody who has survived the system, it is very important for us that good people in the world stand with us. Now, I understand what the UN is. Don't get me wrong. UN is a place where the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly, they all are supposed to come together. I definitely believe that my enemies have the right to speak. And again, I understand what diplomacy means. I mean, here again, you have everybody coming in, whether we agree with them or disagree with them, whether they're good or they're bad, they have the right to take the stage and to speak. And I completely entirely understand and respect that. But at the same time, I think that when we are giving them this opportunity, I mean, Malala, who very rightfully just got the Nobel Peace Prize, she took the stage at the UN and she spoke. And I think it is very important for UN, I mean, even if it's like once a year, actually not only for 1 minute and 20 seconds, but for, we heard, just talk today. So I mean, to invite a few of these victims and to allow them to take the stage and stand in front of the representatives of government and to bear witness to what they have actually felt and experienced. I think that's extremely important. I mean, those who shot Malala, the Taliban, would we allow them to come here to the UN and stand and tell the world that Malala is not worth it, that Malala, for example, deserves to die? I mean, that's what they believe because that's why they shot her, right? But we allow, what's the difference here? I mean, for me, from where I'm standing, the difference between the Taliban and the government of Iran is that the Taliban are not a government at the moment, but Iran is a government.
They're both outlaws. They're both anti-women. They're both anti-human rights.
Extremists. Do not have any respect. The Iranian representative said that there's freedom of religion in Iran. I'm so sorry, but I'm Christian. And I was born in a Christian family. There is no freedom of religion in Iran. Especially if a Muslim converts to another religion, according to Iranian law, he or she could be killed. And the Taliban believes in the same thing. IS believes in the same thing. So the foundation, I think this is so important to understand, that the foundation of the ideology, I'm not talking religion here, but the ideology of what IS believes in, what Iran believes in, the government of Iran, not the people, the government of Iran believes in, and the Taliban believes in. They're all the same thing. But the government of Iran takes the stage, says whatever it wants to the world, and yet we don't give the stage to the Taliban. And this is just a technicality. I just want the world. I understand the technicality. I respect it. But at the same time, the fact that I sit there and I swallow all of that, and many others like me, I'm just asking the United Nations and the international community every once in a while, I mean for the heck of it, to give us that microphone and let us just not be disrespectful of people, but just to bear with us.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.